Hi folks, this is Dandy Reiner at Hatchfinder's Fly Shop in Livingston, Montana. Past couple days I've been working on a sulfur PMD. It's this little critter right here. It has a segmented body, a CDC wing, and little EP fibers for the tail. It's a very effective pattern for the western states. So I'll show you how I tie this little guy up. I tie them in 18s and 20s on a standard dry fly hook. And put my hook in the vise here. I'm using a 8/0 thread, uni thread in light Cahill. So I start off with a thread base, take it down to about the barb. And this has a fine hairs for the tail. These are EP fibers. There's about, I don't know, 6 or 7 in there. Tie those in. And I trim the tail to about the size or the length of the hook shank, if not a little smaller, a little shorter. And then the next step is monofilament. This is the 0.004, and this acts as reinforcement for the body. So I tie that in really well. I bring my thread forward and back a couple times, and then I'm just going to let that monofilament just hang out there for a minute. The body is goose biot, and this is the sulfur yellow. To tie this in, I want to tie it in with a ridged body. So I'm going to tie the biot in on top of the hook shank there. I want the thick ridged part of the biot to be facing away from me and the thin translucent part of the biot to be facing towards me. So now I'm going to turn it to where that ridged part is to my left and the translucent part is to my right. Capture it with my hackle pliers, and I start my wraps. And keep your wraps evenly spaced as you can. So you see it has that nice segmentation. Go ahead and tie it off behind the eye. Trim off the little tag end. If you find biot too tricky to work with, you could use dubbing. This is a really nice fly, dubbed. Now I'll pick up that spool of monofilament, and I'm going to reverse wrap about 5 or 6 times. And I will tie that off behind the eye. So I want to leave my thread hanging right where I want the parachute to be. So right about there. Now the parachute is CDC, and I'm using the Trout Hunter Premium CDC. Really good stuff. It's a bit expensive, and I know some of you are saying it might be kind of wasteful to tie a parachute with CDC. You know, CDC is expensive, so if you would like to use polypropylene yarn, Antron yarn, the EP fibers, to tie a parachute with, feel free. You can tie it high vis, use bright pink, orange, red, whatever color is easiest for you to see on the water. But for the shop, I'm tying these with the CDC parachute. It floats beautiful, and it looks just exquisite with the CDC. So I take a feather that's very broad and long, and I just strip the fibbits off one side, just like that. Bunch it up, and then I fold it on my thread. I take my thread over around the hook shank, and I place those fibbits right where I want my parachute. A few more wraps of my thread. I hold the fibbits up, and I start to make my parachute. Anchor it on there really well. And this color is a pale yellow CDC. It's really pretty. And next step is the hackle. I'm using the Whiting Pro Grade. This is the white dyed golden olive. I like the texture and dimension this color gives my PMD. So you'll want to get out your hackle gauge, and you'll want a feather that's about an 18 or 16 for the size 18. When I tie these in a size 20, I want a size 20, preferably an 18 sized feather. It's okay to go a little heavy hackled on this fly. You definitely don't want to under hackle it. So I tie this on right by my parachute there. And I'm going to take a little bit of Superfine Dubbing in Pale Morning Dun color, and you want just an absolute tiny little scant. I don't want you to worry about tying a thorax with this fly. It's very small. It's supposed to be very thin and slender. So the dubbing is more just for covering up that stem. That's what that acts as. Now, I want you, after you finish tying in your hackle, I want you to put your thread right in between the body and the parachute. So it'll be to the left of the parachute. Just leave your thread there. You're going to take your hackle and come around the parachute about 3 times, and you want one wrap right underneath the other. Now you're going to take your thread and you're going to come around in a clockwise motion underneath all of these fibbits. You're going to come around and under all the fibbits, going around that parachute. A few times, tighten up your thread, and then you'll tie off your hackle. So this will help that problem you have of the hackle coming undone on flies, a very common thing to happen with your imported flies. But this really will cinch that hackle in. Then I pull back the fibbits, expose the eye, a few wraps. And this is where you half hitch or whip finish. And cut your thread off. Trim up your parachute. Cut it as short or long as you wish. Trim any stray hairs you'll find. Yeah, that's really nice. Very natural looking. As you notice, trout start to feed on the surface, use this fly. It's really an effective pattern. I like to fish it on slow runs in thin film water. I like to throw it underneath hanging vegetation. But this is a very, very important pattern in the western states. Pale morning dun. If you you can tie the exact same fly in a light yellow. You don't have to do the sulfur. Sulfur is just simply a darker yellow. That's all that means. But you have it there. And it's a tiny little fly. If you have trouble tying it, don't worry about it. Just give me a call or send me an email and I'll send you some in the mail. But you see that nice segmented body and that beautiful tufted CDC parachute and that gorgeous color with the golden olive matches it really, really lovely. Sulphur PMD. Enjoy.